everyone, this is Jane with Barlow Herbal, and happy Sunday, June 29th of 2025. One more day in June, and then we are fully through the first half of 2025, and it has been an interesting ride so far. And you have to admit that the timelines are speeding up, the ascension process is speeding up, and the Great Awakening is in full swing. There is no doubt. So last week after I put out my Sunday message, I had an interesting response, not just under the comments, but a lot of people like to send me an email because I put out an email every Sunday that contains a link to the video and then just my thoughts on the subject and hopefully a little pop of inspiration that can get you thinking about some things during the week as we're all on this timeline shift together. And so I got a lot of emails from people who'd never really reached out before. And there was a good mix of people who were so grateful that this information landed in them at just the right moment when they needed it, because there's such a good realization in the remembering that we are pure love, pure light, and that we don't need to suffer, prove our worth, burn off karma, all of the things. And then I got a few emails that were people who understood the meat of the message but couldn't get past the idea that we don't need to suffer, or that suffering is just a normal part of the human experience. And so I thought, maybe what I'll do this coming week is really focus on the whole idea of we don't need to suffer and we don't need to be in victimhood. And when I say we don't need to suffer, I mean stay in modes of suffering. Because when we get hurt, when someone else that we love gets hurt, when we watch other people suffer unnecessarily, we watch the wrongs that happen in the world, there are emotions that happen. The kind of suffering I'm talking about is suffering that we feel we have to do in order to be a good person. If we show that we're happy and our frequency is high, then it means we must not be compassionate or empathetic. So I just kind of thought through that the first couple days of the week. I journaled on it a little bit, but I just thought, I've got some other ideas that I really put into my journal this week and thought, I think it will be better to share these. And there is a little bit of the need to release suffering and victimhood is definitely a part of this. So let me start with this. I found a couple of great quotes too. You're not here to be the victim of fate. You're here to become the master of frequency. We are a signal. We are consciousness. When we raise that frequency, then everything changes. The whole game changes. And it can change for us individually. So when we raise our frequency and we practice that, it changes the frequency of the collective. And that's the piece I think we forget. We think if not enough people are doing it, I'm the only one, my frequency isn't high enough. And this is where the piece of not suffering comes in. Because if we stay in those low vibrations of frequency, of suffering, and victimhood, then we're not helping the people who are suffering. Like, we can literally help the suffering by raising our frequency. So I think that here's the very first thought. We need to realize that the timelines right now are what I like to consider frequency bands. So there are frequencies that people are walking on, physically and metaphorically, that are low vibrational frequencies. Guilt, shame, fear, anger, resentment. Some people are so angry at what's happening politically and so distraught over the things that are happening in other countries with wars and of course this is where it's like, yes, of course we have to suffer. We have to be in angst, because what if we're happy? What if we're walking through our life and raising our frequency? So for me, the first part of this thought process is we need to realize that the timeline we choose to be on has to be a high vibe frequency. So you can't walk on an ascended timeline if you're in anger and fear all the time. You can get angry sometimes. Yeah, there's human emotions we express. I'm not talking about those kinds of things. I'm talking about staying on a path of that frequency. It's like the people in my life, close people, who have separated because their belief systems are different than mine, and we're talking about religion, politics, mostly politics, and that to me, I kind of it at this point it surprises me when it's someone who's close to me falls away because they're angry at at what's happening in like the person in the White House. Like, you might not love it, you might love it, but to fall away from the people you love and walk on a different frequency, I don't really get that, but that's what that is. So here's what I wrote. We need to remember that timelines are like radio stations, and they're playing all the time. So you can tune in to the frequency in the radio station that you want to be on. And I've said this before. Our vibration is like the dial. So think about that. We don't earn a new life by trying harder. We tune into it by matching its frequency through energy, emotion, and belief. So that is how we tune into it. It's our energy, it's our emotions, and our beliefs. That's how we tune into the frequency that we want to tune into and listen to the music we want to listen to. Is we just turn the dial. And it can be that simple if you think of it that simple. So the question is the question isn't how do I get there? The question becomes this: how do I become the version of me who already lives there? How do you become that version? Okay, so here are some questions. And I love it when I have these ideas and then it's like, let me ask some questions that I would want someone to ask me. Okay, so here's the first question. What are you broadcasting unconsciously through your self-talk? Let that be the first place you start. What are you broadcasting by what you say to yourself? Because we are definitely caught in loops, habits, programming. We are so caught in that. And then this, what timeline are your habits actually calling in? So think about your daily habits, the things that you just do automatically. Because there's things that we do unconsciously, like brush our teeth with our right hand. So if you could say, I want to brush my teeth with my left hand, you actually have to think about it. And sometimes it only lasts for a few seconds before you switch back to your right hand, because that's where you're comfortable. So you have to think about the habits that you're calling in and what frequency are they on. Who would disappear from your life if your frequency truly changed? My thing is you have to stay in the frequency of love for this to be on the timeline that you want. If you think someone else voted for someone and I'm going to no longer see them because I don't like the way that they think and their worldview, this is where the nuances come in, because there's layers and there's more complications than that. But you have to really think about that. Who would disappear from your life if your frequency totally changed? Okay? Are your desires and your identity in contradiction? That says it all. Is your identity and your desires in contradiction? Is what you desire different than how you identify? Your ego might be in charge. And sometimes it has to be in charge for us to stay alive and keep things going and be able to be in a social construct with other people. Our ego needs to play a role, for sure. But is your ego in charge of your identity, right? Or who's in charge, okay? What part of you is addicted to the version of life that you claim you want to escape? Okay? What part of you is addicted to the version of life you claim to want to escape? Okay, now here's the second thought. And this one is really powerful. Every single choice is a portal. It's like an opening in the timeline. Every single time you make a choice. Because for me, it's like, do the next right thing. If you say, this whole thing is too overwhelming, take the next decision and choice you have to make, whether it's eat the plate of healthy food or eat the fast food. Make the next choice, right choice. Every single choice is a portal to your timeline. And it's not even just about the food you eat, because I mean, food does have vibrational energy to it. You can still raise your consciousness to a high frequency, believe it or not. Even if you eat bad food, it makes it a little harder, especially if your body starts to suffer from physical ailments because your nutrition and the way you take care of your body is not good. Then it makes it harder. It's not that you can't do it, but it makes it harder. But this, just the physical vessel, is, we can use it to raise our vibration, which is really important. So think about this. Reality shifts at the micro level. So that's why I brought the meal thing. That's a micro decision. And that is where reality shifts. Okay? The coffee you drink, the thoughts you tolerate, the truths you speak or don't speak, these are all portals. Every choice is a portal. Each one either locks you into a default timeline or moves you toward a more liberated one. Every single choice. Power doesn't come from big moves, it comes from aligned moves. So here's some questions to ask yourself. What small decisions are you making every day that anchor you to your past? What are you choosing to avoid that's costing you your next level self? Who are you still trying to protect or please, and what timeline is that keeping you on? If one brave decision could collapse this timeline, what would it be? One brave decision. And I love the word brave, bravery, courageous. I even love the word brave more than courage. And I love the word courage because I think it takes courage for you as a divine spark of consciousness to be in this human body at this particular time. You know, we are indeed courageous and brave souls to go through this and remember who we are and help shift the timeline for humanity. That's brave. But look at it on the level of choices and choices as portals. If one brave decision could collapse this timeline, what would it be? And then this, are your choices based on fear dressed as logic? So you have to get real with yourself. You can't just say, oh, it's logical that I'm making this choice, but you're blaming something that's really fear-based on logic. I think that one is really important because I think it's easy for us to fall back on those things. Okay, and then I brought in the idea of the whole suffering thing. So we need to remember that suffering is not required for growth. I'll stand by this till the end. We can suffer if we choose. Choosing to suffer and be in victimhood it's always a choice. You get it. You get it in every moment. You can still be sad. You can still get angry for a moment. You can still feel like your mom wasn't the best mom when you were growing up, and that your grandma didn't give you enough attention, or that you, whatever. Like that covers everything, or anyone. You can choose that, okay? So the idea that you must suffer to awaken is the last lie that will keep you asleep. That's like a nail in a coffin, and that's why I almost spent the whole thing today on the unnecessary idea that we have to suffer. But I thought, you know what, we don't need to talk about that for the whole time. So then we need to think this. The Matrix sold us the story that pain is purification. BS. The more you bleed, the more spiritual you are. That's the great lie. But this is trauma-bonded spirituality. Trauma-bonded. We bond to the trauma that identifies us. Pain can awaken us, but it doesn't have to. Okay? There are people that are awakened by pain. And think about the people who are awakened by a near-death experience. For most people, that's a very, very painful process. Physically, emotionally, mentally, and for many, many people that have had near-death experiences, it's their tipping point into a new timeline, an awakening. a realization of who they are, but it doesn't have to come from that. Everybody on the planet who wants to awaken doesn't have to have a near-death experience. So you can choose to let suffering wake you up, I guess. I mean, that would be interesting how you would do that. But here's what I wrote after that. True evolution comes when you let things like joy, truth, and embodiment lead the charge. Okay? That's where true evolution comes. You can quantum leap through things, through pleasure, rest, creativity, and clarity. No more soul-crushing contracts are required. So you can quantum leap to those things that make you happy and that raise your vibration. Just like you can go, I'm going to turn the channel, instead of turn it one notch every single day until you get to the channel that you want. Say you're over here on the dial and you want to be over here on the dial to get to the radio station you want to listen to, but you only turn it one notch every day. You can turn the whole knob in one day, and you can already get on the frequency and the timeline that you want to get on immediately. You don't have to wait. Why wait? You have to be brave. You have to be brave. Okay, so here's some questions to ask yourself when it comes to suffering, okay? Who convinced you that struggle is spiritual? Break it down to the who and when. Who convinced you that struggling is spiritual? You know, for me, I grew up in a religious household, and there was a lot of piousness in suffering. Always. I could point it to that. And my parents were born into the same religion as were their parents. It's a very long generational history of religion, not just for me, but I think for most of us. Okay? What part of you resists ease because it feels unearned? Why, and not everyone's like this. I do think the majority of people are like this because they're good people, but they're just programmed. So you don't feel like you earn the pleasure, earn the higher timeline, earn the right to always be happy. You have to suffer because other people in the world are suffering, or because your religion told you to suffer, right? Are you addicted to growth through pain? And you call it healing. I know so many people who are addicted to suffering because they think they're healing. They think they're burning off karma. And I would say, there was a certain part of my life that I will admit that was true for me as well. But choice is a portal. You can choose that. If that is what you feel to the depths of your soul is going to take you on the path to a higher timeline and healing, that doesn't sound like a fun one to me. I'd rather have fun. So are you addicted to growth through pain and calling it healing? Then this, what if joy is the most radical rebellion against this fragile matrix? The matrix is fragile at this point. We see it. It's almost ludicrous that we can see it. What timeline would you unlock if you would let life get easier? What if you just let your life be easier? What if you stopped pushing, resisting, fighting, arguing, being mad at the person who isn't driving like you think they should drive? Or what if you just made your life easier and jumped to the next timeline, to the timeline you want to be on the frequency? All right, so suffering. Let's end that right there because it's a choice. It's a choice, and it always has been a choice, okay? Now this thought, and I really love this. We need to realize that the future is plastic. It's elastic. It's flexible. It's not fixed, okay? The future is not fixed. It's flexible and elastic. It's bendable. Like, think of some of the movies, the sci-fi movies. Interstellar, one of my favorite movies. If you haven't seen it, it's, 10 or 12 years old. I've probably seen it 15 times. It's one of my favorite movies on an airplane if I have a long flight, because I think it's a 3-hour movie. It is such a deep thinking, thoughtful movie. Wonderful. Interstellar. If you haven't seen it, I would suggest that you watch it. It's a fun movie. So here's a great quote I found. Destiny is not written, it's energetically selected. Perfect, right? So then this, the you who already lives your dream reality exists now, not later. The you that is your dream reality, that person already exists, not later, right now. Right now. Time isn't a line. It's a field of possibilities. The more coherently you embody your vision now, the more you collapse timelines into the reality that you want, into the one you desire. You're not waiting for permission, you're choosing resonance. You're choosing your frequency. Your choice is your portal. I think that might have to be the name of this message. Choosing changes your portal. What portal you get to walk through. I love that. Okay, so here's some questions to ask yourself about the future being flexible and elastic. What fate have you unconsciously accepted through inaction? Simply because you haven't taken action. You've just chosen the frequency that just happens to be there, and you're just going to ride the wave of whatever that frequency is. Going along with the crowds, doing whatever everybody else is doing without questioning or choosing. What fate have you unconsciously accepted through inaction? Perfect question to ask yourself. What future have you quietly abandoned because it felt too big for you to hold? That is, wow, that is a big one. Because I think for many of us, it might be in this physical body too late to do something that, because it felt too big, and this is an example that might be kind of tough to hear, but what if, and I actually have two girlfriends who are my age, and I've known them for 30 years, and they chose not to have children. And this is no dig on people who decide not to have kids at all. But both of these friends now wishes that they had had children, because I think for me, and this is my own personal opinion, because I have zero judgment toward anyone, what they choose in their life. Zero. But I believe that part of the beautiful human experience is families, is having children. And there's a lot of suffering that comes along with that, but we can choose in those moments how we suffer through that as well. And having children that are now in their mid-40s, I realized I could even choose to suffer as I watch my kids go through their adulthood too, and I've chosen not to. It's so amazing. But these two friends in particular have come to the deep realization in conversations we've had together that they wish they'd had children. And not everyone feels that way. Many people are happy with their choices, as they should be, okay? So, and that was just an example of quietly abandoning your the future because you felt it was too big to hold. Because I think that happens with people that think, maybe one day I want kids, but right now that feels like too much responsibility. And I get that. I get it. I think back on my parents. My parents met in college. My dad was 5 years older than my mom, and she was 18, and they got married, right? A few months after they met, she dropped out of college and started having babies. And she had 11, and they adopted 3. And they didn't, she had her first baby when she was 20. She had me, when she was 19. Then she had me when she was 20. So think about that. Think about a person who has a baby at 19, 20. By the time my mom was 24, she had, or 25, no, 24, she had 5 daughters. She was 24 years old. And I think many people, you wing it. Anyway, I could go off on the thing. I find that choice so interesting to me, because to me, procreating and having children is a beautiful part of being a human. Are you waiting for a sign, or are you finally ready to be the sign? Are you waiting for a sign? Are you waiting to see just the right sign on someone's license plate? Or, are you waiting for a solar flare? We're all waiting for a sign, but you can be the sign, okay? What old story of too late are you still hypnotized by? What old tired thing are you telling yourself that it's too late? It's too late to do something. How many people have you heard of that do something spectacular at age 80 that most 80-year-olds couldn't do? And I'm talking about maybe something physically, but I'm also talking about anything. Get rid of that tired old story that it's too late for you to do whatever it is you want to do. Get rid of that. And then this, if the future reflects now, what needs to stop today? What do you need to stop doing today? If your future, the future you, the future, the timeline, the frequency, the channel you want to be on, what needs to stop today? That's a great question. And then do that. Then do it. Don't just recognize it, write it down, do it. You have the choice to do it. Might be hard, okay, do it. Okay, and then this is the final thought. And I love this because this is an interesting thing to think about. Think about time travel as emotional. Okay, so this is a quote I found about that. You can collapse timelines by healing the past or embodying the future. So we can collapse a timeline just by healing the past and embodying the future. Okay, so here's some thoughts on that. Emotion is the language of reality. What we feel creates our reality. What our emotional state is, like look at what happens to people. The same event happens to two different people, and one person stays in a place of love and hope and high vibes, and the other person is a complete puddle of a mess. And the same event happened. The same event. Okay? So emotion is the language of reality. Okay? We time travel every time we revisit the past with new awareness or activate the frequency of our future self. Okay, so let me read this again. You time travel every time you revisit the past. Think about something that happened to you when you were a little girl that made you cry, or a little boy. When you I have a friend whose mom died when he was 11, and he's now a few years older than me. He's in his 60s. Every time he thinks about his mom dying at 11, he can put himself in the emotional state of that time. You're time traveling. So time travel is emotional. We can now think about, I'm not saying you should never think about your mom or your dad or something that happened in the past that makes you emotional. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that you have the ability to travel back in time in your mind with your emotions and create a different reality. You can have tears come out 50 years after an event happened. So let's take that and let's travel into a frequency of our future self. That's powerful, okay? That's why grief and joy are portals. Sometimes healing and future self-embodiment. And what this is a deep presence that allows us to bend time and jump into new dimensions from within. We can literally do that. We can jump to a different dimension with our frequency. This is so powerful. Like, if this is landing with you, like it is with me, I'd love to hear your take on this. Okay, so here's some questions to ask yourself about this whole time travel thing in order to get to different timelines. What emotional loop is anchoring you to an outdated version of yourself? Wow. I could name 20 things that would keep me in an emotional loop. If I go back to let me just give the example of going back to the first part of 2020 when the whole world shut down and the draconian things started happening and the forcing and the mandates and people mad at each other and the social distancing. Like, I can literally get back in that emotional state just by thinking about that time. So what emotional loop is anchoring you to an outdated version of self? I don't want to go back and stay in that loop. I can be mad. Now, we need to take care and make sure that things are righted from that time? Yes, 100%. But we don't need to stay in that emotional loop. So then ask yourself this question: what future could manifest if you gave yourself permission to fully feel now? What future could you manifest? Whose pain are you carrying that keeps you from embodying your next timeline? This is a piece of suffering that you don't need to hold. It doesn't mean you're not a caring, compassionate person if you release someone else's suffering. And I'm talking about helping them. If someone has surgery or someone needs a meal or someone needs you to help them, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about people that literally carry other people's suffering. I know people like that, and they've been like that the whole time I've known them. And to be honest, there's people who I love, but we now vibrate at different frequencies, and the frequencies literally repel each other. Okay, so let me read that one again. Whose pain are you carrying that keeps you from embodying your next timeline? And then this: are you healing or rehearsing the wound on a higher level? Are you just rehearsing your same old wound and you're just doing it a little bit higher, a little bit better? Then you can justify it. Look, I'm doing this better. And then this: what timeline are you emotionally loyal to? And is it time to let it die? Right? Okay, so this to end. Okay, here's a quote I found. I don't know who wrote this quote. You don't level up by grinding harder. You jump timelines by becoming higher, by becoming lighter, clearer, more aligned, and unapologetically true. Okay, that's how you level up. Let me say that one again. I think it's really beautiful. You don't level up by grinding harder. You jump timelines by becoming lighter, clearer, more aligned, and unapologetically true. We each have our truth. We each get to be true to ourselves. Okay, we are in a window of massive collective choice. We're in this incredible window. This like, I've been saying this now for a while, a few years at this point. We are in the most amazing time for humanity to shift frequency as a collective. And the cool thing is, you guys, is it does not take even the majority. It takes, I would say, 15 to 25% of us. And I already think we're past that. I think we're already past it. Let that be a beacon of light for you to stay on that and working on that higher timeline and frequency and keeping your emotions in. Besides, it's funner. It's funner not to suffer. I will tell you, when I left my childhood religion when I was 34. So it's been 30 years. And when I stepped out of it, it was like shrugging off a heavy cloak. And I've talked to many people over the years about how easy that was for me to release. I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel the need to pull other people out. I didn't feel angry. And I had other people and even siblings who also stepped out, and their emotions were, there was some anger, there was a feeling of being lied to, and I never felt any of that. And I don't know what that was. That was one of the biggest gifts I ever got, is that I was able to just literally shrug it off. And there was no judgment I had no judgment on anyone else and how they chose to walk through the life. It just felt like freedom for me. It just felt like love and freedom for me. So we're in this window where, we are in a window of massive collective choice, and that window won't stay open forever. Okay, that's what I wrote. You're not being asked to be perfect. You're being asked to be present. There's perfect. What is perfect? There is no perfect. We're being asked to be present. Be here, be present. Look at the clouds. Watch the sunset. Eat a delicious meal. Enjoy it. Be present. Don't take your technology with you when you have a meal with your family, or you're sitting on the couch watching TV. Maybe you're watching a fun movie with your family. Don't have your phone with you. All of that. Be present. and be awake and be willing. Be willing and open. Okay? We don't shift timelines by endlessly fixing ourselves. That's not how we shift our timeline. We're not trying to fix ourselves. This was a big message from last week. If you did not watch last week, go back and watch it. 7 days ago, last week. You're not trying to fix anything. You're not broken. You're perfect. That triggered a few people. We shift it by becoming clear about what we're no longer available for. And we can then embody the frequency of the life that's trying to be born through us. Okay? Our energy matters more now than ever. Your energy matters so much. Our healing matters and our joy matters. Our alignment isn't just personal. Okay? This alignment that we are feeling called to be and do and tune into, it's not just personal. What I feel like it's planetary. I feel this is bigger than we can even imagine. Bigger. Sit in meditation and think about that. And let it be expansive for you. Okay, we're not standing at the threshold. We are now standing at the threshold of a new world. So let's not hesitate. Let's not hesitate anymore. Let's go. Let's go. Let's turn the dial. Let's not click it day by day, month by month. Take your dial and turn it up. Make a choice. Jump through those portals. So happy first week of July, you guys. When you wake up Tuesday morning, it will be July 1st. And here we go, blazing into the last half of 2025. So thanks for tuning in today, guys. I love you tons. I hope you have a brilliant week, and we will see you next time.